Expand design, a roomy cabin, dual-tone interiors, 15 smart utility spaces, and a large boot space, all there to expand your life. Welcome to Easy Space.
Issuing a statement, Australia's Immigration Minister Scott Morrison said the illegal entry vessel SIEV was intercepted in late June and that while the vessel was at no point in distress, all persons aboard the SIEV were safe and accounted for. The statement notes that all persons intercepted and returned were subject to an enhanced screening process to ensure Australia's compliance with its international obligations. The statement notes that a single case was identified where a referral was recommended, and in this case the individual, a Sinhalese Sri Lankan, voluntarily requested to depart the vessel with the other persons being transferred and returned to Sri Lanka. The statement reads further, quote, "We will not allow people smugglers to try and exploit and manipulate Australia's support of these conventions as a tool to undermine Australia's strong border protection regime that is stopping the boats and deaths at sea," unquote. Morrison notes that the government will continue to reject the public and political advocacy of those who have sought to pressure the government into a change of policy. He notes, quote, "Their advocacy, though well-intentioned, is naively doing the bidding of people smugglers who have been responsible for almost 3,200 deaths at sea," unquote. Morrison also expresses gratitude for the efforts of the Sri Lankan Navy to combat people smuggling as well as other Sri Lankan authorities. Meanwhile, Australia's opposition has questioned the operation that was undertaken to hand over the illegal migrants. Shadow Minister for Immigration Richard Marles told the ABC, quote, "Australia's international obligations are reliant upon a credible processing system and we have deep concerns about how that could have been performed by video link at sea in a way which gave an individual assessment when all the time the boat was steaming towards Sri Lanka," unquote. It was last Thursday that Newsfirst reported on the possible existence of this second boat as part of our ongoing coverage of this saga. Australian journalist Sarah White, speaking to Newsfirst, elaborated.
The second boat, we now know, left Sri Lanka and it had 50 people on board, and that's the one that has also been intercepted by the Australian Navy.
However, when Newsfirst made inquiries, both the Sri Lanka Navy and the Ministry of External Affairs denied reports of an impending transfer. It is still not known what happened to the other boat, which was said to be carrying 153 people and was intercepted off Christmas Island more than a week ago.
Look, my understanding is they're still being held in custody on board the customs vessel. My understanding is they're being held on the Ocean Protector, but that's obviously something the government needs to clarify. There are 37 children on board now, that prison ship. 37 children who, over a week ago, last time there was independent contact with those people, were sick. Those children were very sick. They were dehydrated. They'd already been at sea for over 2 weeks. Mr Morrison and Mr Abbott need to start being upfront about what's going on. There's no reason for this ludicrous secrecy. It shows contempt for the Australian people, contempt for the Parliament in terms of telling the Parliament what is going on.
Meanwhile, the Australian High Court has granted an interim injunction to prevent the 153 asylum seekers being returned to the Sri Lankan military by the Australian Navy. In an urgent hearing in Sydney this evening after an application by refugee advocates, Justice Susan Crennan granted an interim injunction that would stop the Australian Navy returning the Sri Lankan asylum seekers who have claimed to be minority Tamils being handed over to the Lankan government, its military or its agents. The order sought to protect 48 people who are named and a further 105 unnamed asylum seekers who are also claiming to be Tamil refugees. Morrison, Foreign Minister Julie Bishop and other senior government ministers have all deflected questioning about the boats, repeating that the government does not comment on operational matters. Senior Coalition Minister Eric Abetz yesterday denied the government was disappearing asylum seekers, insisting that Australia would continue to uphold its international obligations in relation to those matters. Morrison, meanwhile, is due to arrive in Sri Lanka on Wednesday, where he is scheduled to hold high-level discussions with government officials, including with President Mahinda Rajapaksa. The ABC reports that Australia's Immigration and Border Protection Minister will also attend the commissioning ceremony of 2 Bay-class patrol boats gifted by Australia to the Sri Lankan government in November last year. Incidentally, the fate of Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 carrying over 230 passengers and crew, which is also presumed to have disappeared on the 8th of March this year in the same ocean area, is still unknown. It is the Australian government that is spearheading the search operation for the missing flight. The Australian government has repeatedly given conflicting accounts on the missing flight, and the whereabouts of MH370 are still unknown.